Leica, hype or overhyped? So I've been shooting photos for 10 plus years professionally. And for the most part, I've used pretty much all Canon. I started out on a Canon Rebel T5i, then a 6D, then a 1DX Mark II, then a 5D Mark IV, then a R5, and also a C70, PowerShot, V1, all Canon. And I love Canon. But as you know, in the photography community, there are a lot of cameras out there. And I've heard a lot about a lot of different brands, but none more than Leica. So I wanted to know what the hype was. So I know Leica is this huge brand, and I know that people either love it or hate it, but I wanted to understand what is the hype of Leica. And the best way I could do that was to get my hands on a Leica. So my buddy Kenny hooked me up. He let me borrow his Leica M10R for a weekend. Okay, so today I have one mission, and that is to find out why Leica cameras are all the rage. So my buddy Kenny was super kind enough to let me borrow his M10, and we're gonna take this shooting all throughout the day. We're in Utah. Right now we're in Logan, Utah. We're gonna be in Salt Lake a little later. I'm gonna take it through its paces. I'm gonna try to shoot like a shooter. I'm gonna see what it's all about and explain to you the differences between this and something like my R5. I know there is a catch. There are a couple things that you have to keep in mind. One, the first thing is that the M10R is an older camera. There is currently the most current M camera is the M11 and then the M11 EV1, I believe, which is the newest one that they just came out with. They also have the Q2, the Q3, the Q3 43, something like that, and also their SLR series. Second thing is that a weekend is really not a lot of time with the camera. There is a lot of shooting that I could have been doing with if I had it for a longer period of time, but because I only had it for a weekend, I decided to mainly stick to street photography and just capturing pictures on the go and use it how I would honestly use it, which is an everyday camera. Another caveat is I've never really used a rangefinder before. Now I have played with the M6, which is the Leica film camera before, but again, that was like only for a day or so. So having the rangefinder was a huge thing to get used to, and I'll talk about that later in the video. All right, so we're gonna talk about the actual camera itself. Now, I am using the Leica M10R. Now, this is one of their classic M series cameras, and it's all manual. So the M10R is a step up from the M10 with a bump in megapixels. I believe it's 40 megapixels, and apparently it's supposed to be better in low light. A lot of people are saying that the bump from the M10R to the M11 is very minuscule, so a lot of people are sticking to the M10R rather than getting the M11 and spending more money. Basically, the M line of Leicas are all rangefinders. They're all manual, and they are very tactile. They're very analog. And the lens that I was using was the 35 Summilux 1.4, which was an amazing lens. And I love shooting on a 35. I'm actually using a 35 1.4 right now, but that's a Canon lens, so never mind. So real quick, let's talk about the build quality. Leicas, if you know, they are built like a steel freaking tank. They're built in Germany and they are super crazy. I was actually at Pictureline one day, which is the camera store I go to in Salt Lake City, and apparently they had a Leica rep show up earlier in the day, and to demonstrate how amazingly built their cameras were, the rep stood on the camera and it didn't do anything. So that's how well made they are. And one thing that I realized was I was actually surprised at how heavy the camera was. The Leica itself is a very small, very portable camera, especially with the lens. It's a very compact camera, but it is built like a tank and it is quite heavy. So it feels really good in the hand, I will say that. The feel is really sturdy. It's not necessarily as ergonomic as a R5 or a 1DX or a R3 or R1, but it definitely has a certain feel to it that does feel good in the hand. And then of course the aesthetic. Okay, so the aesthetic of the camera is actually a huge factor in how you use the camera because it actually makes you shoot differently. And that's something that I'm going to talk about later, is the way the camera is makes you take different photos. When it's slung around your chest and you have it in your hand, you feel honestly kind of cool. And definitely, Leicas definitely have a vibe to them, a cool like look, and you kind of feel more premium itself. You kind of walk a little straighter, so it's a fun experience. Now, I found myself wanting to take more photos that were fine art. I felt like because of the camera that I had in my hand, I wasn't looking through the lens like I would with my R5. It was a very different experience, and I was seeing pictures that I wanted to take very differently than I would say if I was using my Canon. So real quick, if you guys don't know what a rangefinder is, basically a rangefinder is a type of focusing system. Now, unlike the Canons or DSLRs or mirrorless cameras, you don't have an EVF, which is an electronic viewfinder, or you're not looking through mirrors or anything. So you're actually not looking through the lens, which is kind of weird. When you look through a rangefinder, you're looking through one small hole, and then you're also technically looking through another hole on the camera. Now, when you look through the rangefinder, there is a square in the middle. You put that square on your subject, and usually you'll see two subjects, and all you have to do is adjust the focus so that the two subjects meet in the middle and it becomes perfectly symmetrical. That's how you know that your subject is in focus. It is a very different way of focusing, which is very different to what I am used to. So that was something I had to get used to, and at first it took me a while to get focus right. I felt like I was actually missing focus a lot. Another thing too is that when you're looking through the rangefinder, you're actually not seeing what your 35mm lens is seeing. You're actually seeing the 28mm lens, and you can actually see the lens in the rangefinder, which is very strange. But one thing that happens when you do put on a 35mm lens or a 50, 90, whatever, is you see a crop outline in the rangefinder that shows you where to frame your photos. So that is helpful as a part of framing. That is definitely a pro to rangefinders, or it could be a con, just depends on if you like it or not. I found it fun, but it was a little frustrating, and I did find that I did miss some photos a couple times, and it did take me a little bit of time to get the photo that I wanted. All right, another thing is, because this is an all manual camera, from your ISO to your shutter to your aperture, like you normally would on a camera. But what's weird is, without the EVF, without being able to see what you're actually changing, you have to use a light meter, which isn't really new if you shoot film, but for some people it could be potentially new. Leica has a really cool way of adding a light meter to their cameras. Basically, on the bottom of the frame, you'll see a little red dot, and if it is overexposed, you'll see an arrow on, I believe, the right side pointing to the dot saying, okay, you need to dial it down. Or if it's underexposed, it'll be an arrow on the left side saying, okay, you need to dial it back up. And when you're at perfect exposure, you'll just see the red dot. And that's a really cool way of finding out what your focus is. I really like this feature on the M6 film camera when I was shooting a roll of HP5 with the M6. I thought it was absolutely great, and out of all the light metering systems in film cameras, that's probably one of my favorites. But doing this with a digital camera felt very strange, because I was worried that I was going to miss my exposure, and I wasn't very confident in the whole process to begin with. Now, that being said, you actually can shoot in aperture priority, which is what I like to shoot in normally. And all you have to do there is turn your ISO to automatic, as well as your shutter to automatic. And then you go into the settings to fine tune everything. So if you don't want your ISO pushing over 800, you can fine tune that. Or if you don't want your shutters going under 1/250th or 1/125th of a second, you can fine tune that in the settings. And then that way, all you have to worry about is your focus as well as your aperture, which is actually how I ended up shooting. Now, Kenny told me that he shoots, which made it a lot faster and a lot easier for me. And that was really fun. Now, because I'm still not used to the rangefinder, I actually did use live view. And during the live view process, the screen was kind of confusing, but it was nice whenever I changed the focus that I did have peaking on the camera. If you guys don't know what peaking is, basically whatever's in focus is outlined in a red outline. A lot of cinema cameras have this. I kind of felt like I was cheating. I don't know why. It just felt like it was something that I wasn't allowed to use on a Leica, which is kind of ridiculous, but it did come in handy, I will say that. So speaking of the screen and the menu system is really easy to use. It's really easy, it's really simple, and if you know anything about your cameras, things like RAW, JPEG, all that stuff, it's super simple to use. However, the screen on the M10R was absolutely terrible. I've heard the M11 and the newer versions of their cameras, like the Q2, Q3, are all a lot better. They have like OLED screens or something like that. But the M10R, the screen was literally absolutely terrible. I thought I was messing up all the photos. I did not feel confident in looking at the photos at all, and they honestly kind of looked really crappy until I brought them into Lightroom and I actually saw that, oh, these photos actually look pretty good. But I will say the screen on the camera itself was not good. So that kind of took away from the experience of shooting with Leica. But other than that, it was still really fun, and having the screen was really nice. However, there is no articulating screen, so you're just flat on the camera, which I didn't really find a big deal. I was kind of used to that with the 1DX Mark II, but I do realize that I use the articulating screen a lot with the R5 and other cameras now, but it didn't really bother me too much. Okay, now talking about the photos, this is where we're really getting into it. I thought the photos turned out great. Now, all these photos that you're seeing, I edited with my own preset pack, which is linked down below. If you guys want to check that out, you have 7 presets for any type of photography that you shoot, but all these photos are edited with my own preset pack, and I thought the photos turned out really well. I really did like shooting them, and when I saw the photos, I did gain a lot more confidence in my ability to shoot with the camera, so that definitely helped me out there. Now, I will say that this sensor is an older sensor. The M11 sensor is apparently a lot better, has a lot better dynamic range. That's something that a lot of people have said about the M10 line, is that the highlights were clipping a lot. I think a lot of people have realized that the M10R is a little bit different. I think it's a step up, but apparently the M11 and the Q series are a lot better. I haven't got my hands on one of those before, but if I do, I will let you know. And of course, the photos were really easy to edit. I felt like I can raise exposure a lot and kind of edit them a lot or little, and they still look really good. So I found that the files themselves, the raw files themselves, were pretty nice and really easy to work with. So my overall feelings on the camera was a little underwhelming. And the reason is because when I saw the photos, I did really like the photos, but I think I could have got the same photos with my R5. And for some reason, I was expecting this Leica look. Everyone was talking about this look, this vibe that Leica cameras have. And I felt like I didn't get that. And maybe it was because I was shooting with an older Leica, maybe it was something else, but I reached out to Kenny and I texted him about that, and he told me, and he said something really awesome. He said, the Leica look is a myth. The reason why people like Leicas is because you end up shooting differently. You don't shoot like you would with an R5 or a mirrorless camera. You shoot with a Leica and you have a different mindset, a different intention when you shoot your photos. And I think that's where that Leica look comes from. And especially this bench photo, I really felt like that's where that magic kind of happened. Overall, for me, the M10R would not really be worth it. I don't see myself looking into that, but I don't think that was necessarily the camera's fault. I think it was just my expectations with the camera. That being said, if I had more time with the camera and I played around with it more, that might change. My overall experience with the Leica M10R was fun. I did enjoy it, and I think I understand why people like Leicas. It's not necessarily the look. I think you can probably get the Leica look with any camera if you know how to compose and you know how to edit and stuff like that. But the actual experience took me back to as if I was shooting film, when we're so used to all the new cameras that are coming out with things like open gate and 20,000 megapixels and back illuminated global shutters and stuff like that. We kind of forget that photography is an art form. There is a way of doing it, and especially with iPhones nowadays, it's kind of lost. So I understand why the Leica experience is so loved, and I will say it was really fun. I also noticed that my takeaway from shooting with the Leica was a lot different. I took about 300 photos throughout a day, which sounds like a lot, but normally when I'm shooting photos, I come back with at least 800. So I was shooting a lot less, but I was a lot more intentional with the shots that I was taking. There were a lot of times where I would look through the viewfinder or the rangefinder and I didn't see anything that I liked, so I didn't take the shot. And I felt like I was a lot more intentional, like I was shooting on a film camera. I think that has a lot to do with that whole Leica look and Leica experience. So I think that the overall impressions I have of this camera were, it was super fun to use. I understand why people would use it as an everyday camera or as a traveling camera or a, on the go camera. But would I buy the Leica M10R or potentially any of the M line? As of right now, I would probably say no. I don't think I can justify that amount of money for what I am getting, especially if I can't use it to make more money. I don't see myself necessarily using that camera in a professional line of work. Maybe if I can get my hands on a Leica M11 and shoot with it for a week, I can do an updated video. If you guys want to see that, let me know and we'll try to do something like that. But me personally, I don't see myself using the Leica M10R that much. So should you buy it? That's the overall question. It depends. I think that you should definitely try to get your hands on it first, maybe rent it from a camera store or borrow it with friends and definitely try it out, have fun with it. I think it's a little bit more complex of an answer as yes and no. I think you really have to get familiar with the camera. You have to use it. You have to put it through its paces in order to in a sense justify what you're paying. But I will say that I had a ton of fun shooting with it, and I think that was honestly the best part, is I had fun shooting photos. But that was my experience with the Leica M10R. I did enjoy it. I don't think I would buy it. I don't know, maybe I just need more time with it. But let me know what you guys think. If you guys like this video, if you guys like this video, let me know in the comments. I'd love to do more videos where I put more cameras in my hands and try out different cameras. Maybe I'll try a Q2 or a Q3 next time. Maybe I'll try their SL3. Maybe I'll try the Fujifilms next. I don't know. I'm really interested in a bunch of different cameras. But on that note, I will say thank you so much to Kenny for letting me borrow this camera. Thank you, Kenny. If you guys haven't checked him out, dude, check him out. He's an amazing photographer, probably one of the best photographers I know. He just released a Lightroom editing course, which if you like, I've learned so much from Kenny. It's kind of insane that he's like how good he is. So definitely check him out in the comments below. Let me know what camera I should try next. And until next time, I hope you guys have a great day. Take it one step at a time, and I'll see you all later. Peace.